name is Lewkiw. I'm the owner and lead instructor at SideFX. I have almost 25 years of experience in CG, and I've worked on many blockbuster films as an artist, CG supervisor, DFX supervisor, and VFX supervisor. Today, I'm here to talk about some strategies for learning VFX. Actually, these are strategies for learning pretty much anything, with some focus on VFX and, of course, Houdini. So let's say you're setting out to do something epic, like eat an elephant, for example, or learn Houdini. Last I counted, there are over 1,000 nodes in Houdini, and well, actually I didn't count, but I'm just taking a guess, and an infinite number of effects that can and will be created. So how do you tackle this? Well, obviously, one step at a time. This is so obvious to almost not bear mentioning, but of course, it's super important to not get overwhelmed by the sheer quantity of stuff you have to learn. So just like eating an elephant, which you eat one bite at a time, learning Houdini, you have to learn one step at a time. So don't freak out and be overwhelmed by the amount of stuff you have to do. So let's talk about how to eat that elephant. First of all, if you're learning from an instructor in class, you will find the instructors love to lecture. It's the easiest way for us to teach. We can build a lecture and use it over and over and over again. For students, not so great. Studies have shown time and again that passively listening to lectures is not a great way to retain knowledge. You need to both listen and then to practice what you've learned. And a lot of people have researched the best ways to learn. For example, German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus suggests spend 10 minutes reviewing the material within 24 hours, add 5 minutes to refresh it 7 days later, and then on day 30, spend 2 to 4 minutes to completely reactivate the same material. But I don't know, how does this translate into studying VFX, which is often delivered via discrete tutorials online? Well, before I go there, let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard of rubber duck programming? Well, we've probably all had the experience of explaining a problem to a teacher or a colleague, and in the process, we discover the answer to our problem. Well, you won't always have a teacher or a colleague to explain your problem to, so instead of explaining the problem to another person, some programmers explain the problem to a rubber duck. Indeed, this is one way to do it. Simply explain what you did to a rubber duck. Of course, that's not always feasible because, first of all, we don't all have access to rubber ducks. Secondly, explaining how you built an effect in Houdini, for example, would be incredibly tedious and likely not get you many second dates. So do the old rubber duck by building something similar from scratch. This way you are explaining it to yourself. For example, if you've been shown how to make a ground hit explosion, take that same technique and do a wall hit explosion. As an instructor and supervisor, I've seen a lot of reels and I've seen a lot of stuff on reels that I can immediately identify as having been learned from a certain tutorial series. I wouldn't say that stuff's useless on your reel, but you don't get much credit for including it either. You just get credit for being able to follow a tutorial. Seeing the results of a well-known tutorial gives me no idea whether or not you can actually do effects. Another researcher who's looked at successful people is Paul Graham. He says if there's a formula for success, it would feature 3 ingredients: natural ability, practice, and effort. If great talent and great drive are both rare, then people with both are extremely rare. In mathematical terms, rare squared. Most people you meet will have a lot of one, will have less of the other. But you'll need both, great talent and great drive, if you want to be an outlier yourself. And since you can't really change how much natural talent you have in reality, this just means working very hard. Bill Gates, I never took a day off in my 20s, not one. So it boils down to working hard. I don't think that's a big surprise to any of you, but it's not going to be magic, the way you're going to become proficient in Houdini. And indeed, Malcolm Gladwell found this exactly in his book Outliers. He talks about the 10,000 hour rule and how even the Beatles only became great after years and years of practice in the bars of Germany. And in case you're wondering what is 10,000 hours, it's 1,248 8-hour days or 3.5 years, no holidays. Working hard and practicing result in one super beneficial thing, which is iterations. And you can tell how important this is by how fancy this slide is. Doing iteration after iteration will benefit you by allowing you to stumble upon success by sheer chance, which should not be discounted. But in order to do this, you have to be a fool. What does that mean? Well, there's nothing worse than someone reading out the contents of a slide, but here's a great quote from the codebook detailing how the Allies cracked the World War II Enigma machine. Ralph, like us, was willing to be a fool, and the way to get to the top of the heap in terms of developing original research is to be a fool, because only fools keep trying. You have idea number 1, you get excited and it flops. Then you have idea number 2, and you get excited and it flops. And you have idea number 99, and you get excited and it flops. Only a fool would be excited by the 100th idea, but it might take 100 ideas before one really pays off. Unless you're foolish enough to be continually excited, you won't have the motivation, you won't have the energy to carry it through. God rewards fools. Give your brain a break and start building a database of tips and tricks. And don't be that guy that keeps asking the same question again and again. Be that guy with the answer. For example, I once had a coworker who came to me with a stubborn problem with some instances not rendering properly in Houdini. He explained his process, and when he did, a little bell went off in my head. I went to my personal wiki, which is just a Google doc, and searched, and there it was. I'd written down the solution to this problem in the mantra troubleshooting section, and I have no memory of creating that article. So I've gotten this reputation of knowing what I'm doing, but in reality, I'm just really good at knowing where to look for the answer. Here's another piece of advice for you. Be lazy. By this, I mean, sometimes you can simplify something greatly. So you're not exactly being lazy, you're being efficient. In production, your job is, at its most basic, doing the best work you can for the least amount of money. In other words, working as quickly as possible. For example, I once worked with an artist who had to animate a cup thrown from someone's hand and smash it against a wall. He struggled for days with the process of getting the pre-broken cup to fly towards the wall and then shatter. I suggested he just animate the non-broken cup until the moment of impact, then replace it with an exploding cup. No one would know and it would look fine. And recently, when working on the film The North Water, I had to simulate two pieces of floating ice smashing into each other. I couldn't get the ice to behave the way I wanted by relying only on the RBD engine. I had to encourage the pieces to move in a way the director wanted with a hidden pusher. Do not waste your time on physically perfect simulations if a physically imperfect one is indistinguishable and faster as well. Think of it this way. If you can do 10 iterations in the same time another artist can only do 2, who do you think will have the better work? And you can do that by being more efficient. In Houdini, this means using the performance monitor, caching to disk, doing proof of concepts first. If simulating, you start small bounding boxes, large voxel sizes, lightweight or no collision objects, and only work on a subset of your data until you're sure it's working. Don't push the dial to 11 until you've first pushed it to 1. Make sure that you've got a minimal viable product. In addition to being lazy, don't be too ambitious. I know it sounds like I'm telling you to put your feet up and relax, but what I'm really getting at is there's a difference between working hard and working intelligently. So don't bite off more than you can chew. This is a lot harder than it looks. Finish your projects as you go. Don't wait until the last minute to try to jam them all in. Don't work on more than 2 or 3 things at a time. And please don't try to make a feature film for your show reel. If you think something will take 3 days, bump it up to the next order of time. So if you think it'll take 3 days, it will probably take 3 weeks. Controlling attributes is a central task in Houdini. Now, again, you'll notice this is so important. I made a very fancy slide for it. Manipulating and checking your attributes is the single most important thing you will do in Houdini for a long, long time to come. This is the whole essence of Houdini and what gives it its power. Get to know the geometry spreadsheet. You should always have a geometry spreadsheet visible. You shouldn't have to go searching for it. Middle click on your nodes. Always be looking at your nodes to see what kind of attributes they have or don't have. Next, be an artist. What separates the great artists from the merely good? A great eye. The ability to discern what makes something real is a real skill, and not many people have it. You can improve those. Start by doing some actual art, whether it be photography, illustration, painting, sculpture. And this is not some artsy-fartsy PowerPoint filler either. This is real. There are some very smart TDs out there without an eye, and these people either become pipeline developers, and I'm not dissing pipeline developers, by the way. Good ones are like gold, or they fade away. Don't neglect this aspect of your professional development. You can't be an artist without knowing and loving art. And when I tell you to gain an appreciation for art, I also mean manga. If you're asked to do any effect, get out the old pen and paper and sketch it as if you were a manga artist. Look for the beautiful profile of the iconic shape that defines the effect that you're hoping to achieve. So I'm telling you, be an artist, but don't be an artist. Well, don't be an artist on my time. Let's pretend I'm a supervisor at the company you're working for. We're building a product. We have a tremendous leeway in building that product, and it involves a lot of creativity and artistic talent. And your opinion matters, but I have a client to please. If you disagree with something, make your point once if you have to, but move on. We hired you as part of a team to realize someone's vision, and it's best if we can all accept that. What would a film look like if every single person was able to realize their artistic vision? I love this quote from Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I used to walk by this building on my way to work, and I would look at it and go, who the heck put these numbers on this building, and did they think this was a good job? Of course, as an effects artist, you have 2 things to do. Make an awesome explosion or scene of destruction, and make it look real. And this is where you have to know what real is. Make sure you're always referring to reference. And this includes reference on your demo reel. This is super important to any company that hires you, and showing that you understand this is also super important. If you don't include reference, then you're relying on your memory, and that can be very, very faulty. So let's try something. I'm going to ask you to take out a pen and paper, pause this video and draw a picture of a bicycle. Okay, no, really do it. Pause the video and come back when you're done. Okay, you're back. Well, let's have a look at the work of Lewkiw, who kindly gave me permission to use his images in this presentation. He asked people to draw bicycles from memory, then he made CG models of the drawings, and this is what they look like. So as you can see, most people have sort of a vague understanding of what a bicycle looks like, but when it comes to actually realizing their vision with pen and paper, you can see it's not always correct. Okay, now I'd like to shift gears somewhat. I'm sure you've all seen inspirational quotes like this one, or these. And of course, this one. Now again, you know this is a super important point I'm making here because of this super fancy slide. Fall in love with the process and the results will come. Yuck, I really hate that one. Yes, it's important to love what you do and love your tools, but don't get too caught up in this game. You're here to make a piece of art, and no one cares how you did it. Don't spend most of your time making the perfect procedural model for making, I don't know, hundreds of variations of capybaras if you only have to make one capybara. I see this far too often with Houdini artists in particular. They're so in love with proceduralism, they lose sight of the goal, which is making beautiful art. So always assign beauty and results a higher priority than proceduralism and, frankly, just geeking out. Next, I'd like to show you a picture of the stairs in our house. I know that stair runner may not be to your taste, but I love these stairs. But that's not the only reason I'm showing you this. I want to tell you a little story, probably not one you're going to tell around the campsite this summer, but a story about vacuuming. You see, I'm a bit of a neat freak. I like these stairs, which incidentally are the worst combination of colors in the world, as every white speck of dirt gravitates to the black areas and every black speck to the white. So I like to spend about 5 minutes twice a week vacuuming the stairs. Not my wife. However, when she does vacuum the stairs, she spends about 30 minutes getting every single speck of dust off the stairs, which is probably one of the reasons why she hates vacuuming the stairs. Whereas the job I do is probably 95% as good as hers, it gets done much more frequently and to any casual stair viewer, indistinguishable from my wife's version. So because she wants perfect, if it was left to her, the stairs would usually look terrible. Because I gravitate towards good enough, they usually look quite nice, if I do say so myself. Now, I just have to make sure my wife never sees this presentation, which brings me to my last point, your demo reel. Your reel, and pretty much only your reel, is what's going to get you your first job. This is where you need to put your focus. I'm not going to go into what makes a really good reel. There are hundreds of videos out there on the topic. Just make it short, make it only your best work, and only show work you actually want to do. And remember, if you're an effects artist, people want to see explosions, things on fire exploding. And of course, I'm only partially kidding. You should also add cloth and hair, magical effects, lighting and rendering, and much, much more. Houdini's all over the place in productions now. And if there's something you'd like to do in CG, there's probably some company somewhere using Houdini to do it. And to sum up, I'd like to go over the 10 commandments of visual effects learning. Explain it to yourself by adapting what you have learned to something new. Be a fool, iterate, and wedge test. Give your brain a break and write it down. Be efficient. Don't get too ambitious. Be a craftsperson, not an artist. Develop your eye and think like a manga artist. Refer to reference. Focus on the result. It's all about your reel, and love the geometry spreadsheet. I'd like to thank you for joining me, and please check out my other videos. See you soon.